Hi, this is the Shaman Sister Sessions. Is this episode 13? Episode 13. And today, Michelle Hawk and I are going to be discussing discernment, spiritual, emotional, and energetic discernment.
Mm-hmm.
And I am Katherine Bird, one half of the Shaman Sisters.
And I am Michelle Hawk, the Portland-based shaman sister of Shaman Sister Sessions. We created this video podcast as an offering, as a way to share our offerings, our great passions with our community, our global community, through the magic of the internet. These are conversations that Kat and I were having anyway, as we talk about our work as practicing shamans, in the personal and professional realms. And so we decided that after years of being friends and having these wonderful deep dive discussions, that we needed to make it available to our tribe. So this is our offering to you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about discernment today. And I know for me that this comes up a lot with my clients, especially as people are awakening to their gifts, as we are having more spiritual, mystical experiences. We're involved in a global community via social media. We are maybe taking on clients and starting to see clients, or building a larger client base and students. That discernment is really important, and that it is often something that people are like not sure if they're doing right. It's like, oh, well, I'm not sure if I really have that skill, or I need to work on that skill. I know I get that. Do you get that, Michelle, from your people?
I do. I get that a lot, and usually comes in the question of, well, how do you know? Is how that question comes through. Is in there are many ways, and we will talk about this, many ways in which we can practice discernment and cultivate discernment. And one of which is in intuition and awareness, self-awareness, body awareness, working with certain types of people. And then the question, the way that I hear that most often is, well, how do you know? And the answer to that, the very short bullet point answer to that question, is discernment. Through practicing, you're being able to identify energetic characteristics, being able to identify and actively pinpoint certain energetic patterns, wavelengths, frequencies, and especially directly how they affect you in your personal field. That's one of the key components of discernment. So yeah, I see this with, I would say, the vast majority of my students and clients, or people who are coming to me for mentorship, want to know, how do you know?
Yeah, I love that. That's true, Michelle. There is a lot of how do you know. And, there's, when you look up the definition of discernment, the first thing that it says is the quality of being able to grasp and comprehend what is obscure. And I think that that's the piece. It's obscure. It's hard to put your finger on. It's intuitive. It's guided. It is something that is hard to explain. So we're here to try to explain. We're here to try to explain what is discernment. What is discernment? What is discernment to what is discernment to us, and what is discernment as we see it out there in the world?
And especially in determining that which is obscure, the vast majority of what we're doing and what our students and clients are doing is in the very intangible realms. So the way in which we as humans are used to considering information and asking for proof, and especially the scientific community, I myself, I'm a trained biologist, so I spent most, if not all, of my academic career in research involved in the scientific method, the scientific body of knowledge, which very much relies on what can you measure, how can you make it quantifiable, and how can you isolate variables and look at one thing at a time. And it doesn't really work that way when it comes to esoteric practices, when it comes to energy work, is we're inherently working with something that hasn't quite been quantified yet, and that's okay. And so the way in which we're able to come into quantifiable awareness as much as we can about this practice is through our own discernment. You are the best barometer. There's nothing out there as of right now that is able to accurately and consistently measure energies and intuition and psychic information and vibration for the purpose of a layperson. You know, there's research in quantum physics that is addressing these things, but for right now, you get to be your own instrument of coming into quantifiable relationship with that which is inherently obscure and intangible.
Yes, exactly. And you know, we can discernment. It's a skill. It's a practice that builds over time. I know that for many people, especially those that have more psychic tendencies, you know, as children, we're often told, you're not seeing that, that's not real, that's your imagination, don't say that, you don't know what you're talking about, those sort of things. Some people are lucky enough that they didn't have that come up when they started saying things to their parents or at school or whatever, but
that was me.
Yeah. So that was really lucky because that built your discernment like toolbox. You're like, oh, okay, I can actually trust myself. But when we come from a society and a system that discounts what children say, that does not see truth in what is not visible, that is very anti-imagination. I remember when they made Snuffleupagus become a non-imaginary friend, they made him be a real friend. And because it was like, oh, we're going to damage our children, making them believe that things that they see that other people don't see are real. So there's been,
and treating it as dangerous, potentially dangerous. Yeah,
exactly, as a danger. So there's a lot of people who have had their kind of discernment squished. And if that's you, just go, oh, okay, that's part of the training that I received not to trust myself. So I'm actually going to have to work on this a little bit more. And it really does come down to self-awareness and tracking, really, sitting with ourselves and recognizing, oh, this feels good, this doesn't feel good, this feels right, this doesn't feel right, this is a yes, this is a no. And over time, the more that we give ourselves permission to do that, everywhere. And it even starts with small, like if you feel like your discernment and your trust of self has been sort of damaged by your upbringing, the places to start are even small, with smelling different essential oils and being like, oh, this is the one I need right now. Going to a restaurant and really tuning in, or the grocery store, and not being like, oh, I'm just going to grab some stuff or what I always get, but really tuning into your body and asking, what is it that I need right now? What is it that I really want?
And before that, I would say, Kat, there's even a step before that, because being able to identify a need is even one step beyond the most basic of just how do I feel? What's going on? And just noticing, oh, okay, I feel tired today, and actually give yourself space to notice that. You know, we are so conditioned. You're bringing up the very significant role that social conditioning has to play in our development of discernment, where we are taught, no, you don't tune into your body. No, you don't. Am I upset?
Can you repeat that, Michelle? Because the audio went out, and I think that was really important.
Sure. I'm also, hold on, I'm closing my internet, so I have less stuff. I forgot to do that. Yeah. So discerning how you're feeling. Am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I sleepy? And even just giving yourself permission to discern that basic level. And then absolutely, okay, how do you meet those needs? Like, what foods do I need in order to support my body? What am I craving? I had I don't eat a lot of meat, and I kind of have to work to make myself eat meat. I know my body feels really good when I include red meat in my diet, very like ethically sourced, grass-fed, healthy, awesome, organic, as much as possible, red meat. And last week I had to go out of my way because my body wanted a burger so badly. So I made a friend date with someone who I know also likes burgers, and which in Portland is kind of hard to find sometimes. And I went and I had a burger, and it felt so good in my body. I felt so strong. I felt my body just soaking up that nutrition that I hadn't had a good dose of red meat in a long time, and I felt amazing. So that was an example of practicing discernment to meet a basic fundamental need of nutrition in my body.
Yes. And I think that's really important, because a lot of times we have the social conditioning of, oh, this is the right thing that I should be doing. I should be, doing this kind of exercise. I should be eating this kind of diet. And oftentimes, if we're not really listening to ourselves, we can completely mess ourselves up doing what is really good for other people and not listening to ourselves. So I guess that's almost like physical discernment, sort of physical discernment. And that is the physical body, the physical form that you have. It is the best indicator of what is true for you and what is right and what is wrong inside of you. And so starting from that physical place, when you're really good at that, then it's easier to move into these other aspects.
Yeah, the more intangible realms. And so why do we care about discernment? We kind of touched upon this a little bit briefly, but why is this particularly important, especially for empaths and healers and intuitives? I mean, discernment ultimately is important for everyone, but it is only through discernment that we are able to actively assess how I am right now. How are you right now? Really? Like what is your discernment level of your physical condition, your emotional condition, your spiritual condition, your mental condition, your sleep, your nutrition? We bring discernment to all of these areas in order to meet our needs and take care of ourselves. That's one of the most fundamental aspects of discernment, of why do we care? Yes, there are many other ways, and we will get into this, of working with spiritual discernment and energetic discernment particularly, but ultimately it comes down to how can we make our own lives more wonderful and healthy and vibrant. And we'll be delving into self-love next week, and everything that we're talking about here today is totally applicable to how can you up-level your practice of self-love through your own discernment.
Yes, exactly. And, for me, there's so many places where this steps in, anecdotally for this week recently, Charmaine Hayworth and I have a men's coaching company on top of the work that I do individually with people. And we coach men that are high powered and work in finance and movies and all kinds of business. And, our mission is around helping men have better relationships with themselves and with others. And in so doing, helping men that are at this sort of level of functioning, we're able to change the world in a very profound way. And so this has been the mission for this aspect of this business. And we come across a lot of people. We come across a lot of men. And this last week, we had a lunch meeting with a man that was a possible client. And in the course of the lunch, we both got this really big hit. By the time we left lunch, we were like, oh no, this is not our client. This is not somebody that we want to work with. He's not in alignment with the integrity that we're looking for, and is not coachable really, because he's, just being argumentative and not really open to what it is that we're bringing. And the work that we do is already, it's deep, it's transformative, it's profound. We don't want to drag somebody kicking and screaming up the mountain. We want somebody who's like, okay, I'm with you. I've got my bag and I'm with you, and this isn't fun, but I got it. And oh my God, look at the view. This is amazing what I can do now. And so there's that piece of taking on a client like that, because it was looking at a one-on-one, long-term client, like that's somebody who we're basically inviting into our life, into our field, into our energy. We're spending a lot of time working with that person. We're having lots of conversations. We're doing a lot of energy work. We're doing a lot of deep work with that person. And, that is a big commitment to make towards being in basically a relationship with someone as a client, and being able to be really clear, even if it's like, if the money is there, or the, whatever it is, being able to go, it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It's not,
That's huge. Who are you mixing your energy with? And you're giving an amazing example in the professional sphere. And I know you've had other examples of this too with previous clients, where you've either turned them down or referred them to somebody else because you were able to discern that your energies weren't the right fit to be working together. And I've had some examples of that too. And some of those lessons I learned a little bit the hard way, and maybe you have as well, from working with a student or client where it is very clearly the wrong fit. And so then you ultimately practice your discernment of, I am not the best teacher or not the best practitioner for this person. And how can I then be a good teacher or practitioner by guiding them to a better resource? And I'm really grateful for some of the wonderful teachers who I've had show up in my life in the form of students and clients to help me learn that lesson of my professional discernment about with whom am I mixing my energy when it comes to my work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, what I sense is that when you're in need of an up-leveling of your discernment, you're going to get someone show up that is going to challenge you in some kind of way. It's like we get tested, and we are really being able to start, to work that even more strongly. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times, especially when you're first starting out as doing healing work, and you're like, I'm a healer, I'm here to help people in whatever path that is, that you're here to help people, it's often really hard to say no. We don't want to say no to people because we're like, that person's in pain. That person needs some medicine.
Yeah. So, or if only I could just reach them.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And, really when we hit that point where we're like, okay, it is okay for me to say no. It's okay for me to refer someone to someone else who's going to be a better fit. It's okay for me to end a session if something becomes inappropriate. It's okay for me to end an agreement that has been made prior for working together. It's okay for me to refund people's money. If that feels like that's necessary, because usually if we don't, and we get that message and we don't do it, we're just going to suffer. It's not pretty.
Yeah. And it's okay to fire clients.
Mm-hmm.
And fire students. And yet even this process that we're talking about of discerning, how to treat those professional relationships, your ability to do that comes from your own discernment of, again, your own personal energy field. So I feel like, we keep jumping ahead a little bit, but let's bring it back to what are some tools to go about even identifying, that client isn't the right person for me to work with. It involves, tuning into what feels expansive in my vibration, what feels contractive in my vibration. These are some questions you can ask yourself of, does this interaction make me feel expansive, or does it make me feel contractive? Do I get excited when I think about working with this person, or do I feel like I'm not super into it, but maybe I need the money, or maybe they need my medicine, or there's some aspect of something that doesn't feel right, but you're pushing into it to say yes anyway. So asking yourself, how do I feel? What's going on in my energy? What's going on in my body? If your body, so Kat, I know you're really awesome on the body awareness, and that's something I've cultivated too now, but I didn't start that way. It was easier for me to ask what's going on in my energy. But now asking yourself, if you're really tuned into your body, put your hand on your heart and feel what's going on in my heartbeat when I think about working with that person, and what's going on in my heartbeat when I feel at peace. So you can use yourself as a barometer, use your breath as a barometer, use your, any sort of muscle testing, or I have a finger test thing that I do where I'm able to identify, oh, this is what my body responds to as when I'm considering this idea. So that all comes from your own discernment in yourself first.
Yes. And, really starting to track what's your system do. How does your system respond? So it might be a gut feeling. It might actually be in your stomach where maybe you feel like a little gross in your belly and you're like, oh, okay, that's an interesting feel. Or what I find sometimes, it's kind of on the back of my neck and up to my head, where if it's almost like that creepy feeling when you're out alone and you're like, oh, I should cross the road. And so just kind of tracking, what does your body do when it's sensing, because our internal system is so wise, that all we have to do is start to learn its language. What's the language that your body is speaking?
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's, kind of step number one. If we're offering you some tools here, is learn your own baseline. So that then you can, moving forward, detect deviations in, oh, I'm not at baseline anymore. Is this an expansive thing, a contractive thing? Is my body trying to keep me safe? I'm thinking about working with this client and my shoulders go like this, and I just want to, be, in this sort of posture. Your body's recoiling and saying, no, do not work with that person. And then, okay, how do I come back to what do I need to adjust in order to make my body feel safe and open again? Okay, I'm referring that person out. Now my body is able to open up. Yeah.
Right. And this goes for everything. It goes for all kinds of things. And, it might be a move that you're going to take, or a job, or someone that you're going to date, or a party that you're going to go to. I know sometimes you and I will call each other and somehow as the permissionaries for each other to not go to an event, because both of us kind of struggle with, we work so much, we're with people all the time, and then we want to go out and we want to be social and we want to have fun, and it sounds like a good idea, but then we hit that wall and we're like, oh my God, I just don't even want to go. And sometimes we call each other and be like, I should go, but I need permission just to stay home and go to bed and do nothing.
Yeah. And Kat, I'm sure this happens for you too, but whenever I call you with that, is it okay for me not to go to the party? When we're on the phone, I'm going like this. Yeah. And then as soon as you say, yes, it's okay to stay home and read a book or take a bath, and then
I'm like, oh my God, thank God I don't have to go to this thing because Michelle said it's okay that I don't go out and network, or, go to this thing I already bought tickets for. And, it's, we're so hard on ourselves. So, maybe that's another tool, is to have a discernment buddy.
Yeah, like an accountability buddy, but for discernment, if there are times when you're feeling, or either you're not willing to listen to what your energy is trying to tell you, where, oh, I want to go to this party, but I just don't want to go. And, your discernment, everything is screaming no. And then you have a really good friend or a partner or someone in your life who reminds you, okay, actually listen to what your discernment is saying. Because really, that's what we do most of the time is, I don't ever tell you no, you shouldn't go to that. I just say, really, what do you want? And then you're able to say oh yeah, I really don't want to go. And just tune back into sometimes we need a push again to come back to, yes, what you need. Your best possible outcome from any given situation, or you can have a good idea. So just actually listening to yourself is again, number one step in discernment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about emotional discernment a little bit. We've talked about physical discernment. So how do things feel in your body? Noticing your nutritional needs, your exercise needs, maybe not pushing super hard if you're feeling really tired, and taking a day to do some very yin yoga instead.
And watching, I think another piece of that is really for women, really paying attention to their moon cycle and how that affects them, and using that as a way to also gather more information about what it is that's happening in your life, and when you choose to do things.
Exactly. Yeah, that's super important. And I know you and I do cyclical work. So if anyone needs help with that, please, shout out at either or both of us and through Shaman Sister Sessions at gmail.com, and, come into discernment around your cycles of power. But on the emotional front, I actually had a really interesting example of this pop up last night, like yesterday and last night, where all yesterday I was feeling so fatigued and depleted. And, Kat, you and I talked, and I ended up having this little outburst of something that I was feeling that I didn't even know I was feeling, because I hadn't quite allowed myself to tap into my discernment about how something emotionally had so integrated into my body, so that it was affecting me deeply on the physical level, in the form of adrenal fatigue and in the form of exhaustion and running my energy in a certain way. So I came into some new awareness of that last night, and I couldn't fall asleep until after 2:00 in the morning last night, because I was finally allowing myself to drop into deep feeling about this emotional situation that I'd been treating a certain way or trying to feel a certain way about, or like mostly examining but not quite delving into. And then some other factors were at play too. There was a lot going on last night, and I was channeling stuff, but the emotional discernment was so important yesterday. And I slept in this morning because I was discerning, okay, it's not good for me to get up and go for my normal run. I'm supposed to run 6 miles today. I'm just going to have to do that later, because I'm paying attention to what actually is going on. So on the emotional discernment front, a lot of our empath viewers will be able to relate to this. What is mine versus what is not mine emotionally?
Yeah. And I know that even for me, sometimes, even I think that I'm very fortunate in the realms of social media that I was raised in Texas, but I don't have anybody on my list that is in my family except my mom, and no like people from school. Like I'm very in the bubble on my social media where there's very little people putting out things that I'm like, oh my God, that I can't believe you would think that. But I know that I do have a few people on my feed who are of a certain opinion on certain things, and sometimes when I read the things, it just like it breaks my heart, and I'm so sad, and it makes me, I can feel it in my body, my heart starts beating, and I start to kind of really feel horrible. And so there's so many things that are happening out there, so many people are having such strong emotions about things. And for those of us who are really empathic on feeling people's emotions, and then people are going through their process, right? They're going through things, and people are dying, and babies are being born. Like everybody's having these emotions, and now we're starting to take our emotions and kind of just like squirt them out onto the page of social media, so that as you're looking through, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this emotion and this emotion and this emotion and this emotion and
Yeah. And bleeding off some of the tension in the only way that many people know how.
Yeah. And it's can be really overwhelming to our systems without us even realizing that little tune in to the emotional pulse beat of your community can start to kind of knock you off of what is really, really true for you in that moment emotionally.
Mm-hmm. So then it becomes more important than ever to practice your emotional discernment of asking yourself, this thing that I am feeling, is this mine, or does this belong to somebody else? That was one of the biggest things as I was stepping into my comfort with being an empath, That was one of the biggest things that I had to learn how to do, was create a space of stillness where I could close my eyes and feel into, okay, I'm feeling this thing very powerfully. Does it actually belong to me? And quite often the answer was no, because we are very sensitive people. And, you know, our viewers who watch this, I know many of you are practitioners in certain modalities, or many of you are awakening to your gifts. And I'm sure that you found this too, where you're having to learn, okay, what actually is mine and belongs in my emotional sphere, my emotional body. And at times, like now, where the emotional frequency of the planet is running super hot and super high, how do we process that through our systems in a way that doesn't negatively impact us or negatively affect us? And the first step is being able to identify, that's not mine. And then from there, you know, this is getting into a little bit more advanced work, either processing it through your system or not, or asking it to leave. And that's one of the things that I was coming up with last night, is there's somebody else's emotions that I could feel strongly impacting me. And I did decide to let some of it move through me as a service to this person. And I think that's part of the reason I was up till after 2 a.m, is because I was processing somebody else's emotions. But it was through the discernment of noticing, okay, this isn't mine. And then discerning, all right, this needs to move. So I'm going to let it move through me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as empaths, I mean, it's almost like there are even certain subsets of people who, you know, who are almost like the grief workers of the world, who are really tuned into moving emotions through their body. And it's okay, you know, just to kind of come back to, it's okay to be highly emotional. It really is. Some people, as they go through their awakening, they have repressed emotions so greatly that when they start to open up, like, it's just a flood, and it's just like, oh my gosh, well, I sit down and I cry every day, and it's just what I do. And that's okay. It is okay to have that happening in your life. But what we want to really look at is the space of, oh, maybe I don't have to take this on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I can ask for a break from this emotional experience, and, you know, ask for something a little bit lighter right now, and, you know, do the actions and the steps to be able to, you know, move emotion through the body, through tears, through crying, through screaming, and yelling, and moaning, and rolling around, and tapping, and all of the things that we can do to move emotion through the system. And then allowing ourselves some space to, you know, do something different, shift the energy, and, you know, go outside, go for a hike, go, you know, play with the dog, like whatever that is, that's going to shift the frequency in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's the next step, is back into energetic discernment, where once you've identified, okay, this emotion that I'm feeling isn't mine, and then energetically able to discern, is it in the highest and greatest good for me to let this move through me, or is it not? And then based on your assessment and discernment of your own energy, making an informed decision to act upon for that situation. So these all do play together. And, you know, let's touch upon our third one, the spiritual discernment. This is something that, again, working with our mentorship clients, our other practitioners in the field, I have a lot of my Reiki students, my Reiki and Shamanic students, come to me asking about spiritual discernment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is very common. And, you know, as people awaken, maybe you do a plant medicine journey and you have these experiences, or in meditation, you start to receive guidance, or maybe you see things, maybe you see energies or beings. And this is one of the most common questions when this starts to come up, because there's a certain amount of fear that is held over anything that's in this unknown category. And how do I know if what I'm receiving is real? And how do I know if it's actually good? Like, how do I know if it's of the light, or if I'm being tricked, or I'm being, you know, used by some dark energy or something? This is often a really common question.
Yeah, I know you and I both hear that all the time. And that was coming up even in your healer's process course that I took and participated in. People talking about channeling, people talking about intuitive information. And this is one of the things I was just speaking with one of my Reiki 2 students yesterday, I think, and speaking about her intuitive discernment, where she wanted to know, am I good enough? Is this okay? Like that I'm not seeing things in the way that other people see things? And so we delved into a little bit, okay, you don't see things the way that other people see or that I see or whatever, but how do you receive information? And then once I was asking her some of these questions, she was able to discern that, oh, I feel temperature in my hands and I feel pulses in my hands. And it was a revelation to her that even that is a profound means of discernment and practicing noticing. Whereas, and I know, Kat, you and I have talked about this too, where, I see things very clearly in a way that not a lot of people do. And yeah, and that's something.
I don't see things as clearly as you. I have visions and I get information, but it's not that when you describe what your experience is, it is not the same as what I experience.
No.
I don't think. It doesn't seem like that to me.
No.
So I know that for myself over the years, I've had judgments about, am I good enough at this or is this right? Because it's not as like solidly clear. And over time, as I've continued to work, things have developed and I have, opened up new gifts, but there are many different kinds of channels too. And sometimes if we start comparing ourselves, we go on YouTube and we start looking at people who channel or do healing work or whatever, we can really knock ourselves out because your channel is not necessarily going to look like somebody else's channel. And some people see things really clearly and some people hear things really clearly. And some people, I'm really good at moving an energy through my body to perform healing.
Yeah. So that discernment, and I know we've done an episode about this in the past of intuition. I don't remember what week it was. It was somewhere like week 6 or 7-ish. And so feel free to jump back to that episode and look in there. But you're talking about cultivating a practice through discernment. And that's something that I had to do for, what naturally comes to you about moving energy through the body. That's something that over the years I have been able to practice. But whereas visions and seeing very, very clearly comes so easily to me, the other means of discernment and movement of energy, I've had to cultivate and practice. And it is through me paying attention. And this is what I was telling my Reiki student I was speaking with yesterday, is discern the ways in which you receive your intuition. Pay attention and treat it as valid. We live in a very visual society where a lot of people, that's like the big sexy way to receive the information, right? Is to have the psychedelic visuals. And I had this crazy vision and it was great, to a certain extent, awesome. And then also like, how are you cheating yourself out of other means of discernment? So once we were able to dial that in with her a little bit, she loved knowing that, I can feel very deeply in my hands. I can feel the different beats of my heart. We were talking about heartbeat discernment for her too. So your intuition is bringing discernment to your intuition, both in terms of how it appears to you. So how are you receiving your information? That, and then also fine tuning. Is it real? Kat, you brought up that question. Is what I'm seeing real? Yes.
Yeah.
That's the short answer.
It's real. It's real. It just is. It's real. And I don't know any, mediums, healers, channels, whatever you want to call, whatever it is that you do. I don't know any who don't have that, like, oh my God, am I just a crazy person? Is this real? Am I really doing this? Am I really channeling this angel? Am I really talking to an alien? Am I really seeing someone's past life? Am I really pulling something out of someone's body. And what I found, and I know that you recently praised me for this, is that even in the what's that called, even in the space, the doubt, even in the space where maybe I'm doing a transformance, or I'm doing a session, or there's this stuff coming through and it's channeling, there's this little piece in my brain that is like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, is that, there's always that little, it's like a little bird that's like, you shouldn't do that, or, and
you probably look really weird right now doing that thing.
So weird. Don't do that. Like, that's not what you're supposed to, like, why are you doing this weird thing to this person? Why are you singing this song? Why are you doing this thing? And, what I have done, and even putting work out, a lot of us, like, we put writings out on Facebook or on our blog, or we put out a video or whatever it is, there's always going to be that little part of you that is like, no, don't do that. And so for me, I found that my strength, one of my greatest strengths, is to be like, nope, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this. Yes, it's true. And I'm doing it anyway. Thank you very much for your input. I really appreciate you trying to keep me safe, but this is what I'm doing right now.
Yes. And that's a great example of using your discernment to identify the little bird of doubt, the little tapping of doubt. And I've had that too, where I'm, as I'm channeling, thinking, oh my God, that sounds like a totally crazy thing to say. And then, just saying, okay, whatever, this is just what I'm doing right now, and creating the space. But again, recognizing the discernment between what is real, like, and in this case, the real would be the information that I'm channeling, the connection with source, the connection with spirit who's coming through and using my voice as a vehicle. And what is not real? Okay, in this case, the thing that is not real is my doubt about even asking the question of, what the fuck am I doing here, making a spectacle of myself and channeling these songs? So our ability to do that, and this is something that I know we both have worked on over the last several years, our ability to do that comes with practice and continuing to ask yourself, again, does this make me feel expansive or contractive? Again, going back to your energy, your body, go back to your baseline. What's going on in my body? What's going on in my heartbeat right now? And so you'll be able to tell, once you figure out your own tells, your own barometer, your emotional and energetic barometer, what is real and what is not real in the intuitive realm. Mm-hmm. It starts with your personal realm.
Now, one thing that I do want to address and talk about is that I know for me, and for a lot of people, when we first start to open our channel, and we're starting to channel through information, that one of the things that happens is we're sort of like this, little open portal, and there are lots of beings running around. There's lots of beings from lots of places that have lots of agendas. They have their thing that they're trying to accomplish. And when we very first start opening up, sometimes we do connect with lower level frequency beings. We connect with things that aren't necessarily going to hurt us, but maybe just they don't really have that great of information, or like they're not really going to be a value added experience for you to work with as a guide or, a spiritual mentor. So, and one of the pieces is that we really do have to do our own personal, individual clearing work to clear out the pain and the trauma and the lower level aspects of our own self through, I believe, physical practice, through breath work, through moving the body, through tapping and shaking and singing and toning and these physical practices, even through yoga, qigong, all of these things that cleanse and purify our systems, through being in right relationship with others and with the earth, through living a life of integrity and working on ourselves, looking at ourselves and working on ourselves. that as we do that, we are raising our vibrational frequency, and the concept of nothing of a lower vibration enters that of a higher vibration. We can then start to communicate and commune with higher vibrational entities and beings.
Yes. And, so you're offering the example of there are some beings who are going to take advantage of the open channel space. And remember earlier we were talking about clients and students appearing as teachers for us to practice discernment of, do I want to work with this client or not? The same thing is going to happen in the spiritual realm. Exactly. Coming to the earth plane is really fun. There are plenty of entities out there, plenty of beings who, it's not necessarily going to be a harmful experience or a detractive, negative experience for you. But they have their own agenda of, sure, I want to come jump into a human body for a minute and, feel the things. This is really cool. And again, it's not anything necessarily harmful. It's just, is it value added for you?
Yes.
And is it, what space is that taking up in your energy? And then being able to discern, okay, you're not necessarily a harmful entity, but that does not contribute to my health and well-being in any way. And it's just you coming in and popping into my body for a minute and then taking off. And then I feel kind of weird. So I'm just going to say no. I'm going to practice my discernment and say no to that. And again, these beings come in as teachers, or even not necessarily if they're coming into your body in the channel space, or if they're coming into to an active channel space. I remember, Kat, you and I were talking about this, and I remember you asked me, haven't you ever had any examples of entities or beings coming in and feeling afraid or feeling nervous or concerned? And no, I haven't, because my teachers in that way appeared externally to me. So I never have had an entity come into my body or any channel experience that I didn't actively feel okay and confident and safe in, because these beings appeared externally so I could see them. I could identify them over here and say, okay, I'm not letting you come any closer because I'm not interested in interacting with your energy. And so then practicing discernment. Do I want to let that thing into my field at all? And I said no. B, practicing boundaries and sovereignty. I guess that would be C. So boundaries and sovereignty. And, we're at some point, we're going to do a channeling episode of talking really like, how do you and I channel, and what is that like? And getting to, again, use our spiritual discernment and energetic discernment to say, do I want to let this thing into my field or not? And thank you, teacher, but no, stay out.
Yeah. But I will share that in my journey, I had a radical spiritual awakening. I was on medications since I was 15. And when I went off, within a couple of months, I started having a very intense mystical awakening. And because my sight wasn't the same as yours, where I wasn't having the external, I was really like having beings jump into my body. And I had no training. I had no information. I had no mentor. I had no teacher. I had the teachers on the spiritual realm that I know, now were working with me. And this was part of my training. But I would have beings that would jump in my body, but their vibration was so profoundly different than mine that it was uncomfortable. Or they would come in and I would have the experience of, they're just experiencing what it is to be in a human body. They're not actually doing anything for me. They're not working on me. They're not giving me information. They're just there to have an experience because I'm open. And or I would have an experience where I would start channeling while I was driving my car down the freeway. So I didn't know at that time that I was a sovereign being, that I had control of everything, that I could say no. And, I had to learn that. I had to learn those skills and to really say, no, you're not allowed inside my body right now. I am not open for this at this moment. I am not available for this information to come through right now. Mm-hmm. This is the time when I'm available for the channel to be open. These are the beings that I'm wanting to work with, those that are of the highest vibration, those that are of the light and love. I'm not interested in, in these other kinds of beings. So I really experienced that very much personally, firsthand, these experiences. And it was intense. It was shocking. And I know I even really shut down the channel for a little while, because it was like, oh, I don't want to do any channel. And then starting to really work my system, learn the skills and the tools to be able to state what I'm here to do and what I'm not here to do, and to have communication with these beings, and to use my discernment when something starts to move through my system. Oh, I know this one. I know this being moves through me and heals people. I know this being moves through me and heals me. I know this being comes and brings beautiful gifts of song. I know this frequency. It feels good in my body. It's not painful. It's not uncomfortable. It feels good. And even asking sometimes, like, hey, your vibration is really different from mine. Can you make this a little bit easier on my human body right now?
Yeah, Kat, I have a question for you. As you're talking about kind of your abrupt awakening experience, especially into working with guides or working with entities, do you remember back to that time any of the tools that you used to discern that, oh, maybe these energies or entities aren't a good fit? And, I'm, of course, considering that for myself too, because as this question occurred to me, I'm realizing, how did I discern that? How did I discern, oh, I'm not interested in interacting with that being? So, you know what I mean?
It really was a felt sense,
Yeah.
inside the body. And, information wise, like, what is the information that they're giving me? What are they telling me? And,
Mm-hmm.
is that really helpful? Like, is that helpful information, or is it just, almost just like talking to hear yourself talk? And but really the felt sense of it. It was really a felt sense, and being like, yeah, that doesn't really feel great. And I don't believe that, we've talked about this before about, really dark negative energies and, entities. And I have seen and worked with some dark beings, and they exist, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't had the experience of feeling extremely vulnerable to them. But when I first was starting out, I didn't have control. I wasn't in control. They were in control.
Yeah.
And that is not the place that you want to be, because you're the channel. Like, you are in control, number one, all the time. And you're really good at this, Michelle, because I know that I've witnessed you in your healing work, where you will let a more lower level frequency being speak, and you'll hear them, and you'll let them get their message through. And then you're very succinct and precise with, you're done right now, and you're not talking anymore because you're not being helpful.
Yeah. And that's something that I've, speaking to the channel space, that's something that I've cultivated over years of doing that work. And again, going back to the Healer's Process course, when you were doing the lesson or the class on channeling, that was the first time I actually really noticed or verbalized, oh, I have rules for channeling. I didn't even know that I had rules for channeling. And I think, we should come back to that another time. Let's make that a whole other episode. But for right now, so you were talking about the felt sense of discernment as you were beginning to step into your relationship with being a channel. And as I consider some of these beings, I remember very distinct moments, these opportunities that I had where I knew there was, I was walking down the street one night and I knew that there were some beings hanging out further down the street. I felt it. I could almost see them. It wasn't quite a clear visual, but I 100% knew, okay, there's some energy over there that I don't want to mess with. And I'm remembering so clearly it was the feeling that I had in my body. And I think I also was pinpointing that as a felt sense, you know, kind of that hairs coming up on the back of your neck, like you were talking about. This body feels, okay, there is something over there that doesn't feel good. And my awareness at the time, you know, this was several years ago, more than 10 years ago. Yeah, this was quite a while ago, but that was one of the first instances that I had of there is something obscure. Remember, we're talking about discernment as a means of identifying the obscure. This is something obscure and intangible that still I can tell, even though it's not real, right? It's not a tangible thing. I can tell that it is not in alignment with my vibration. And I didn't have the words for that at the time. At the time, it was more just a like, no, 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 that feels bad. That feels wrong. And since then, being able to come into refined discernment of, okay, then you can ask yourself, why? Why does that feel bad? Do I need to know more information? Is it a not right now thing? Is it a something that wishes to cause me harm? Or can I, as a sovereign being, set up my boundaries and still walk safely through that energy without having it touch me? But it starts with the very first, and maybe, you know, to our viewers, depending on where you're at in your journey of discovering your discernment, it starts with maybe it's just a red flag, like, nope, don't go there. Maybe it's your gut feeling like, no, no, no. And then as you continue to refine the process, being able to pull out more information and then use your actionable tools moving forward.
Yes. And, you know, one thing that I would just lightly hit upon is that when you're clear about who you're working with, beings of the light and love, that's who you're going to get. And if a being is showing up and promising you things like money or fame or sex or recognition in some kind of way, that you're going to be this powerful guru or teacher or even a healer, like, that's not usually how beings of the light and love really communicate with us. They're not trying to buy us.
Have you ever had anyone show up and offer you things?
I haven't, but I've had people reach out to me who've had that experience.
Yeah, I've never had that either. And I guess it kind of surprises me. I'm surprised I haven't heard of that before, but
yeah, I have had people who've contacted me who've had that experience with beings, and it has not turned out well.
Mm-hmm.
Because you start forming a relationship that is a give and take relationship, and they're going to take from you. And you don't want to start forming contracts and bonds with beings to give you things, because they don't. I mean, if you think about like the angelic realms and you know, guides and masters, they're not poker players. Like, they're not like tit for tat, I do this and you do this. That's not how they operate. They're of such a high level functioning of consciousness that wouldn't even come across to them as an option of how to interact with a person.
Right. So let's go ahead. We gave you some wonderful tools today, viewers. And again, I kind of want to run through this because we did talk about a lot of information. Yeah. Ultimately, the most important thing that you can do for yourself to build your practice of discernment is tune into your own energy on all the levels. You know, tune into your body. What does your body have to say about any given thing? And find the way that works for you. For me, I've got this finger thing that I do, that if I'm being tapped on to get my attention, my finger will start going like this. And so I'm like, okay, what's going on? And from that, I'm able to discern, okay, this, you know, feels like this versus feel, you know, it's a subtle thing, but that's one of the ways that I do that. Or notice my posture. Kat, what are some ways that you tune into your body discernment?
You know, I really just feeling like breath, like where the breath is, like, can the breath fully move through the body, and does it feel easeful, or is it like not able to happen? You know, where the thing in the shoulders, the thing in the neck, the gut. You know, I do sometimes use little, you know, the little
muscle testing
of, you know, my name is Katherine or my name is George, and then, you know, can ask yes or no questions. I sometimes do that when, you know, looking at supplements and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is that felt sense that's happening inside.
Yeah.
And I will say that, some of us, if you've experienced a lot of abuse in your life, sometimes that self-discerning experience and trust of self has really been damaged. And so it is something that you really have to work on even more than maybe other people do.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And Kat, I know you mentioned earlier the instance of being shut down as a child, that as well. So any circumstances that you've been put in, or that you have put yourself in or found yourself in, that cause you to doubt yourself, abusive relationships. I had this come up I was in an abusive relationship several years ago where I wasn't psychic when I was with that person. And it was a means of discernment for me of, okay, so anyway, that's kind of a long story, but it was a teaching moment in discernment. And so really coming back into reclaiming your trust. So trust in your body, again, discernment in your body, discernment in your emotional field. What's mine? What's not mine? Is this, originating from my heart, from my emotional body, or is this originating from someone else's emotional body? Energetic discernment. Do I feel expansive? Do I feel contractive? Do I feel joyful? Do I feel distrusting? There are all these means that we can practice in our own internal field to then go out into the world and bring that level of greater discernment and of awareness to other areas, working with clients, our personal relationships, working with spirit guides, etc.
And sometimes it's even that the experience of between being energized or exhausted. And I know that after I work with my people, like my clients, I am so energized. I'm just like, yes. And I feel so good. And I know that if I'm, if I'm feeling really exhausted by an experience, like I look at that, like I look at everything underneath that. We're discerning everything that's going on in my day and in my daily life and in my experience of why that is there, and really discovering. And sometimes we have to make choices and stand up for ourselves in ways that we are uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to all of our viewers, if you would like some assistance in cultivating your practice of discernment, Kat and I would be excited to talk about what that might look like. So please do feel free to contact us. You can email us at shamansistersessions@gmail.com to see about applying to work with one or both of us together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michelle. So lovely to talk about discernment with you. This is an amazing topic.
Yeah, thank you. This is super exciting. And, I feel like I can't highlight it enough as a necessary fundamental of doing energy work is you must have your discernment in place. Most of us, nope, that's not even true. I was going to say most of us have learned that by this time, but based on, that's a profound no. Based on, now I'm thinking about all my practitioner clients. I work with many people in the field who are wanting to up, and teaching discernment to your clients, if you need help with this is not necessarily an easy skill. So again, we both have a lot of experience in this, and it is fundamental to be doing any kind of work in the world, any empath work, any grief work, any energy work, working with plant medicines, working with shamanic energies, working with guides and entities. You need to know how to discern what is in the highest and greatest good and what is not.
So thank you for tuning in to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 13 on discernment. And we will see you next week. It's going to be our Valentine's Day special. And we're going to discuss self-love, which is the most important love there is, maybe. And we will see you next Tuesday at noon Pacific Standard Time.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.